Good evening and welcome to week 6. Can't believe it, we are on the downhill side of this course. This week you're going to be writing a writing lesson plan. The writing lesson plan will also be based off the 5th grade text that we've been using the last several lesson plans, so please make sure you stick with the same text. This writing lesson plan can be easier to write. What I would suggest you do is go to the standards first and look at the standards before you decide on a project or a writing piece. Look at the standards. The first one here is on writing an opinion piece. I'm not sure 5th grade students have enough prior knowledge or maybe background information besides what they've read this week to have formed an opinion of their own on what is said in the text. This one is an informative, which would work with our topic. It talks about introducing, developing the topic with facts, definition, concrete details. They could do that one with this week. They could use precise language from their vocabulary. So that one would be a good one. A narrative. I'm not sure a narrative would work, but dialogue, description, pacing, develop experiences and events to show responses of characters. I think that one would be more for a literature story. So you can go through here and pick out a standard, but please pick the standard before you decide on a project. So let's go back to the lesson plan. So in this section, you're going to have the same social studies standards because you're basing the writing project on the same text that we've been using for the previous lesson plans. So you're going to need the social studies standards and writing, a writing standard. Here, this is the same. Remember, this has to be filled in. I've put a PDF on the Moodle site. The purpose of the lesson has to be about writing, whatever type of writing they will be doing. Make sure the objective is written in the style Warner expects. When you are looking at the degree of mastery, the scoring of the writing will be based on a rubric. And what percentage of the rubric do you want them to master? Assessment. You still need a formative and a summative assessment. Yes, you need both. The formative could be while they are writing the piece. The formative could be peer editing. A lot of things could be in the formative section. The summative would be the final written piece. So the formative would be when they are creating the writing the first time, and the summative would be the final product graded based on the rubric. Materials, you should know that by now. Accommodations, still the same. Remember, your ESOL, you have to do the 5 separate strategies or the 5 different areas of ESOL that you did in EDU 3010. Everyone is not doing that. And so let's make sure that you do the 5 separate areas this week. Vocabulary. The vocabulary is going to be the same that you have been using for the previous lessons. Copy and paste. Introduction. Make sure that you are introducing what type of writing they will be doing. Explain it. Show a model of it. In today's classrooms, we don't do enough showing or modeling, and students are expected to do a certain writing without the teacher's guidance, and it doesn't work well. So make sure that you are explaining what type of writing it is. You could talk about the writing process and what one should look like when it's done. Practicing. I might suggest that if you take that graphic organizer that they did in one of the previous lesson plans, that would save a lot of time. So in the practicing section, you could give them back the graphic organizer they've created and use that to build their writing on. I know a lot of you did the graphic organizer with main ideas and supporting details. So basically, they would be writing a summary of what they put in the main idea and supporting details graphic organizers. So that would be a great way to integrate what you did in one lesson plan in another lesson plan. And so then they need to do the first draft. So the practicing is going to be taking that graphic organizer, writing the first draft. The generating, this could be where they do peer editing. One of the best things a teacher can do is have and teach students how to peer edit. I'm currently working on that with the school where I work during the day. And the teachers are learning that when students peer edit correctly, it saves them so much time, because a lot of the grammar, punctuation, and the conventions mistakes can be caught during this peer editing session and saves the teacher so much time when they're grading. So the generating could be where they are peer editing, and then the closure is where the student reads their own final draft. So here in the generating, they could peer edit and then rewrite. The closure is where they do the final writing. So one of the things that this lesson plan is requiring that I have not required in the other lesson plans is a rubric. So what you can do is you can go online. I just Googled writing rubrics for 5th grade, and there's tons of them. Don't feel like you have to create a rubric. There's tons of them out there. Find a rubric that matches the assignment that you're giving. And when you do find a rubric, the rubric needs to be introduced with the introduction, because the students need to know what you're going to be basing their grade on early, so that when in the practicing, when they're getting their graphic organizer and they are doing their first draft, they can have the rubric right beside them, making sure that they are including everything that's expected in the rubric. And then when they're peer editing, they use the rubric here. And a peer can use the rubric to make suggestions for corrections. And then the closure, when the student is doing the final check on their final writing piece, they need to have the rubric to make sure they have included everything that's being expected. So in writing, a rubric is huge. It's what you introduce to help the students mold their writing to exactly what's expected. So this is the writing lesson plan. Please make sure it's based on a standard. You have to remember, you have to teach a standard throughout the entire lesson plan. So it's one of the things that we have to incorporate in every subject area, and that's more writing. So this week you're writing the writing lesson plan. One of the other things you need to keep in mind, that if you scroll down to like week 7 and 8, next week is the fun week where they can create a technology project. Be thinking of that. And then in week 8 is one of those weeks where it can be very quick and very easy, or it's going to be painful because you've waited till the last minute. If you look at week 8, and I know I haven't opened it up for everyone yet, but week 8 is the FEEPS assignment. So if you go to week 1 was the FEEPS assignment, and that was the vocabulary lesson plan. And week 8, let me open week 8 so you can see it real quick. If you go down to week 8, I'm going to make it darker so you can see it a little bit better. But in week 8, it could be a very easy week. Week 8 is where you're going to take all 5 lesson plans, have them corrected based on the comments that I made, and then you're going to resubmit them. So week 8 is a FEEPS assignment. So that means you are going to submit all 5 lesson plans and a final unit test. So you need to go back on the vocabulary, correct anything. There are some of you that need the new vocabulary rubric that I'll give you after the vocabulary lesson plan is 90%, graded at 90% or better. I will not go back and change the course grade, but I will give you the rubric that you'll use for your portfolio. So as this shows, in week 8, you're going to resubmit the vocabulary, during reading, after reading, writing, and technology lesson plans along with a unit assessment. Now, if you look at the date this is due, because there's a very short timeline between the end of the course and the date I have to have in your final grades. So the unit FEEP, all 5 corrected lesson plans along with a unit test, is due on that Wednesday. So it's a very, very short turnaround from the time I will give you back your technology lesson plan to the time that all 5 corrected are due. So keep that in mind. You might, if you happen to get, done early this week, I might go back and start correcting some of the lesson plans. The final week 8 unit plan is 250 points. So if you are concerned about how you're doing in the grading department so far, week 8 is a great week to pull that up. And I've told you before, what I usually do is I will open up the comments that I've made on each of the rubrics, and I will check the lesson plan according to the comments on the rubric. If the comments and the corrections were made, then the lesson plans will get the top grade. So keep that in mind, that you need to start going back and correcting the lesson plans. Unfortunately, with me doing both courses at the same time and some courses having 2 assignments due a week, that, it's a lot of grading for me. So I really can't have you send them to me and me check them and then give them back and then you do the final submission. It's just a little bit too much. If you will follow the comments that I make on the rubrics, then you should do just fine, because that's what I'll look at. I try to give these back as soon as I can so that you have the time to look over comments before you write the next one. So that is the writing lesson plan, and that is also a look ahead at week 8. Kind of hard to believe that we're almost to week 8, but we are. So keep that in mind. So if you have any extra time, which I know we're all very short on, but it's just a short turnaround for that week. So that is our week 6, and we are getting better on the lesson plans. We just need to remember that every part of the lesson plan needs to teach the selected standard. And keep in mind, the writing lesson plan has to be based on the 5th grade text that we've been using. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Email me. I try to answer them as quickly as I can, and hopefully I'm answering them flurry. If you don't understand my answers, please let me know, and I will send a better explanation. So I will talk to you soon. Thank you for listening.